Hey, it's John at Tinderbox Arts. It's winter where I am right now, and so usually I'm just daydreaming about spring and summer rides at this point, but we had a warm stretch and I took the RT out for a little exercise, and in the process discovered something that is definitely a problem, which is this left side case did not open. Let me show you. So of course these side cases have two mechanisms, one to remove the case itself with this handle, and the other one pops this little handle up here which allows you to open the case. Well, this handle here was just locked shut. It would not open the case. Now sometimes if you have a lot of stuff jammed in here, there's a lot of pressure on the door, and I usually just take my knee and push against here just to give it a little thrust, and then press the button to release this handle and it works fine. But in this case I knew the case was empty and there was a problem. So this is especially concerning because I have a big trip coming up in May, and man, I do not want to be 3,000 miles away from home and find out I can't get out my luggage. So the way I finally got it open, I took it off the bike and I was playing with it for a little while. I took silicone, just like this stuff, with the little straw there, and I put the straw into the keyhole and around here, which is really the only area you have to try to get some silicone in there. I don't even know if it was doing any good, but I sprayed it real well. And then I just took the key, and what I did was basically pump that button. So normally you just press it once and this handle pops open. So I took it pretty violently and just started pumping it back and forth until it just eventually popped the handle open. I was able to get it open, and I'm not closing it again. So with that in mind, at this point I want to make sure I don't have any more problems. So needless to say, I need to take this apart and lubricate the insides there to make sure, you know, when I am far away from home, this isn't a problem. Okay, I've resettled in my barn here where it's a little bit warmer, and I think what I'm going to do is separate the two halves of the case here. There is a couple hinges right there, and I'm just going to take off one half. There's a case within a case, basically, like an inner and an outer case, if you want to think of it that way, and there's just a whole bunch of screws here. So let me just get rid of this side, which we're not going to deal with. Okay, that exposes the inside here. Now, I've never done this before, so you're going to be learning along with me here. There's just a million screws in here. I haven't counted them, but there's a lot. And notice the threads on these are for plastic. It's almost like a wood screw. It's not a machine screw. The screws have a washer with a rubberized bottom there for protection, and that kind of wants to stay behind, so make sure you don't lose those. All right, as I'm taking these screws out, I'm learning you do need to take these hinges off anyway, because they are screwed into the inner case, if you will. You can see that right here. When I switch to this side area right here, the screw heads are now a T20 size, and these particular ones have a big rubber washer. Now this retractable little catch right here, I did not unscrew. I just left that on the case. So I'm just going to leave this like this and see if I can carefully remove. Feels loose. Yeah, it's definitely coming out. And just pull this whole inner case out. Okay, let's take a first look together here. You know, in typical BMW fashion, it may be a little more complicated than it needs to be, but right here is where the key goes in, so that whole section is related to that. The handle to remove the whole luggage is right here, and that little handle to open the case is right here. So truthfully, it does not look that dirty. I do see something here, some smudge and stuff here. So it might just be that I just need to clean a couple areas up. Most of it looks pretty good, honestly. Down here, I mean, yeah, this is all well greased. This is the mechanism that locks the case to the bike itself. Let me just focus your attention right here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold this key area in so I don't lose that. But if I close the handle that normally opens one half of the case, I'm going to do that like this. Just watch up here. You see how those come out? And that's what locks it in place. And again, it looks well greased. I don't really see any issues. Now I'm going to hold this and unlock it with the key and push it like you should be able to do. Yeah, it comes apart all right. Now, I notice when I push that down, which is supposed to release this, I gotta be careful here, I gotta hold this in place while I'm pushing. Yeah, so if I look over here, there's a whole mechanism right here. Watch, I have to hold this so it doesn't fall out, but if I push down like you're supposed to do to release the catch, see how that, all this here moves and that rod moves? So that rod, that's interesting. I wonder if that rod's getting worn. And this rod is somewhat concerning. There is a, you probably can't see it, but a little plastic ball right here at the end, which acts as a spacer. I don't know, maybe I need to adjust that rod slightly, but I think I'm just going to try spraying in here and cleaning it all up and see if it gets a little snappier response. All right, I took the key mechanism out here, and if you look at it, I think maybe my problem is this rod. So it's got this little plastic ball at the end, and it's bent, and at the other end, it's also bent, and that is what connects to the mechanism which releases the handle to open the half of the bag. And I think maybe that rod is slightly too long now. I could potentially bend this end slightly just to give it, you know, a little bit tighter play than it has now. So I'll look at that, but I'm definitely going to lube this up very well, clean it all out, make sure there's nothing in there. Now I sprayed out the lock cylinder and I re-lubricated it, and it's definitely snappier now than it was before. I'm using this grease, for the lock cylinder anyway. What they used before was this black, looks like a moly base grease, which would not be my choice for a lock cylinder. So I'm not sure why they did that, but for the rest of it here, I may use that same type of grease just because there's so much of it here. It's just not worth cleaning off, and it seems to be okay for the mechanical areas here. But for the lock cylinder, at least, I think a lighter grease is better. Now this mechanism here on the bottom, this has this little tab that comes up, and that's what secures the bag to the bike. If I take off the cover to that, there's a lot of grease there, but you can also see where, you know, some grit and stuff have gotten in, and that's pretty obvious because here, this tab that comes up to lock the case in place, you know, dirt and stuff can get in there, so it's just dropped down over time, but it's not too bad. But this whole area in here, I want to re-grease. Now this latch mechanism up top, I just cleaned all the grease out, and you'll see it is spring-loaded, right? So it's supposed to return. I wouldn't call that a snappy return, but it's better than it was, because with all that grease, and the grease must have had some grit in it, this really didn't return that quickly. So now I do need to grease this again, but I don't want to use what they used before. I'm going to use this, this lighter weight stuff here again and hope I retain some of that snap. Even now dry, it's not perfect, but it's better than it was. All right, got the lock mechanism back in place. Just to give you a close-up in case you need it, remember this little clip right here points upward. Let me try to get real close on that. All right, that points upward when you put it back together. I got the rod going across there. And on this side, there's a washer that goes on this side of that little guide right there. And the spring goes against the washer. So everything's really back together. You know, I'm not really sure there's any one thing that's wrong. It's just a combination of things that are just a little sticky and, you know, just need a little cleaning and greasing. So I'm going to put this all back together now. I almost forgot to mention where the latch comes in. On the inside skin, I'll call it, there are these metal straps, and there's a little rod right here, and these straps move back and forth, right? Same on this side over here, if I get over here. So that moves back and forth, and there was no grease that I can see here from the factory. You know, I sprayed it with silicone just to clear it out, make sure there's no grit or anything in there, but I'm kind of leaning towards giving it a light greasing with that clear grease that I have. When you're fitting the inner skin back to the outer skin, the latches need to line up, and you can just take a screwdriver and just move them one way or the other as you need to, just to make sure it lines up, and it'll just drop right in. All right, I have this half back together. I haven't put the other outer half on yet, but this was the handle that I was having trouble with. Now when I push that down, it clicks really nicely. Before, it had kind of a muddy feel to it. And if I go over here and press the button, it pops open really nicely. So I feel good about that. That is definitely much snappier than it used to be. I did end up bending that rod ever so slightly for a little bit shorter length, and I think it was probably good that I did. All right, that's it. All back together. It works beautifully. I press that button. Watch that handle pop up now. Boom. And it opens like a ripe pumpkin. If I pull the handle, the half opens up easily. So all good now. I am going to do the other side as a preventative thing. It's working fine now, but I don't want to find out 3,000 miles from home that it's a problem. But this isn't something I think you need to do very often. But if you've been in a lot of rain or a lot of schmutzy road stuff, then, maybe it is something you want to look at.